All right, so we're just going to keep going this morning. We're going to start off at Genesis chapter 25, and we'll just start right at verse 1. Uh, Abraham took again his wife. Abraham again took a wife, and her name was Keturah, and she bore him Zimron, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan begot Sheba and Dedan, and the sons of Dedan were Ashurim, Letushim, and Leomim. And the sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. All these were the children of Keturah. So one thing we need to remember is that Isaac wasn't Abraham's only son. He had Ishmael previously. And then sometimes we forget that it's not just those two. He had 6 more sons from Keturah. Verse 5, and Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac, but Abraham gave gifts to the sons of the concubines which Abraham had, and while he was still living, he sent them eastward, away from Isaac his son, to the country of the east. So, I guess the first thing is, if he gave all he had to Isaac, how did he also give stuff to all the other ones? We have to understand that it's saying, he gave gifts and stuff with some maybe monetary value uh, to the other children before he sent them away. But since the promise was going through Isaac, he was to stay in the land, and his inheritance was everything that came along with that. Uh,
Could it mean that Isaac got everything Abraham had when he died?
yeah, yeah, maybe, yeah. Um, of note, there's a couple names that we recognize: Medans, Midian, especially. Uh, the Midianites will come back later on. We'll see them a handful of times popping up. All descendants from Abraham, but all, uh, for the most part, enemies to future Israel. Pick back up at verse 7. This is the sum of the years of Abraham's life, which he lived, 175 years. Then Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years. And he was gathered to his people. In verse 8 there, where it says he died an old man full of years, probably all of our Bibles have of years in italics because it doesn't, the text, the manuscripts don't say that. That italics there is a translator's edition. So some translations will say of years, some won't. Um, but the meaning of that is that he died satisfied, or having lived a full life, or he died content. Verse 9, and his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the field of Ephron the son of Zohar the Hittite, the field which Abraham purchased from the sons of Heth. So remember, he bought that to bury Sarah in, and then later on Isaac and Ishmael both buried him there. If we remember, Ishmael's nowhere to be found right now. He was sent off to Egypt, I believe it was. He was sent away from Isaac and the promise, but he came back to bury Abraham. So there was a reunion with Isaac and Ishmael for at least a period of time, um, where they let bygones be bygones, at least for long enough to bury Abraham. Um, we know that people, large, enormous people groups came out of both Isaac and Ishmael's bloodlines, um, and that they are, even to this day, still at war with each other, with the Arabs and the Jews. Um, the Middle East conflict will probably never go away in in this earth. Um, verse 12. Now this is the genealogy of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar, the Egyptian, Sarah's maidservant, bore to Abraham. And these were the names of the sons of Ishmael, by their names, according to their generations. The firstborn of Ishmael, Nebajoth, then Kedar, Adbeel, Mibzam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadar, Tema, Jeter, Naphish, and Kedemah. These were the sons of Ishmael, and these were their names by their towns and their settlements. 12 princes according to their nations. If we think back, when God spoke to Hagar after Abraham and Sarah had sent Hagar and Ishmael out into the wild country, uh, God spoke to Hagar when she thought that Ishmael was going to die, and he told her not to worry, that he would be a great nation and that princes would come from him. These are the 12 princes. I believe the Muslims even refer back to these 12. But this is the starting of the Arab nation, their bloodline. Just like the Jews have their 12, uh, the Arabs have their 12.
Is the Jewish 12 all sons of Abraham?
They're all sons of Jacob. Yes. Um, verse verse 19. This is the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 when he took Rebekah as his wife, the daughter of Bethuel and the Syrian of Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban the Syrian. Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived. Uh, Rebekah was barren; she couldn't have children, just like Sarah before her was barren and couldn't have children. And then God did a miracle and told Abraham and Sarah that they were going to have children, even though they were way past the age. And now we see Isaac needing to depend on God to do a miracle for Rebekah to have children. And later on, we'll see that that trend continues then with Jacob and Rachel. Um, second half of verse 21, after she was barren, and the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled, or fought, or contended, or wrestled within her. And she said, if everything is well, why am I like this? So she went to ask of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the younger, or the older, shall serve the younger. So Jacob and Esau, twins, both in at the same time, already wrestling, already struggling with each other. Esau is eventually going to lead to the Edomites, which is going to also be a large people group. And then the promise, of course, is going to go through Jacob. Um, Esau, Edom, means hairy or red. Jacob means heel grabber or trickster, one who trips somebody up. Um, and we'll see that uh, we'll probably skip. There is a story, a Jewish tradition that does claim that Jacob is actually the older, even though even though he came out second. But we're gonna skip that. If you want to talk about it, we can talk about that later. Um, verse 24. So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb, and the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, so they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out, and he took hold of Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah bore them. So the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. He may have been a shepherd even. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So we already start to see the cracks. This is going to be a little bit of a an interesting family dynamic between these guys, um, between all four of them, really. There is a lot of underhandedness and tricking that's going on, but even some of in verse 28 where it says Isaac loved Esau more because he ate of his game. He liked his food, so he liked that boy better. Um,
He's the
and
one who brought home the steaks.
yeah, and then Rebekah, she loved Jacob um, more, and I don't think either is probably correct. I don't think we're supposed to have a preference, uh, but either way, it's setting up for discord in their family. So, verse 29. Now Jacob cooked a stew, red bean soup, and Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary. Therefore his name was called Edom, red. But Jacob said, sell me your birthright as of this day. And Esau said, look, I am about to die. So what is this birthright to me? Then Jacob said, swear to me as of this day. So he swore to him, and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils, and he ate and drank, arose, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. We'll see that phrase come up even in the New Testament, that Esau despised his birthright. And a lot of times we can read that and just kind of look over it like what's the big deal? There's a lot of big deal going on right here. Um, so it doesn't say how old they are at this specific time, but if Jacob is a skilled, or if Esau is a skilled hunter, then there's some age there, right? Enough that their parents, uh, so Isaac and Rebekah would have been talking about this promise that's been passed down from Abraham, right? They all know that there's this promise that's supposed to be fulfilled through their family. They all know it. This is the birthright that Jacob's gunning for, right? He wants that birthright. He's not talking about uh, he wants a certain amount of cattle. He's not talking about he wants gold. He wants that birthright for that promise. Um, and the fact that he basically extorts his brother to trade him a meal. He tricked him into trading in that birthright for a meal because the firstborn gets the birthright. It's just how it is. So it would have been Esau's, but Jacob tricked him into selling it to him. And Esau, again, maybe he just didn't have enough faith to believe that this birthright was a real, that this blessing, this promise of the land and the offspring, maybe he didn't believe that it was real. Maybe he didn't trust God. Maybe he thought it was just an old wives' tale and there really is no such thing. So it was okay for him to trade that for a meal. But either way, that's how it happened. Um, so the question that we're going to stop and ask there is, could Esau have not sold Jacob his birthright? Did he have a choice in the matter? Up until now, we see God spoke to Abraham and told him that there's this covenant and the whole world's going to be blessed through your offspring. He told that to Abraham. Then he told it to uh, Abraham told it down to Isaac. Um, so Isaac knows that this is going to happen, that his bloodline is going to carry this blessing, or at least he should have the faith to believe that. He's aware of the conversation, anyways. Uh, but so far, there's nothing that says that the promise is going to go through Jacob instead of Esau, except the prophecy that we just read about when Rebekah was pregnant, and the Lord told her that there's two nations in your womb and that the older will serve the younger. So Rebekah knows that it's going to go through Jacob. We don't know if she has passed that information on to anybody or not. But the fact that Rebekah knows it's going through Jacob, does that mean that Esau had to sell his birthright? That there was no way around it. Esau didn't actually have a choice. Um, God basically forced that to happen. So we'll look at that.
Well, that does then uh, establish Esau as the older, correct?
What establishes him as the older?
The fact that he had the birthright.
Correct. Yeah. Um, so, position one, the prophecy said the promise would go through Jacob. Therefore, Esau had no choice. He was predestined to give it to Jacob. Okay. Position two, the prophecy said the promise would go through Jacob. Therefore, God already knew the free will choice that Esau was going to make. Do you guys see what I'm driving at? So, did Esau sell his birthright because in all actuality, he didn't have a choice because God already determined for him to do it, so he had to do it? Or did he do it and God already knew that he was going to do it? That's why he told Rebekah that the promise was going to go through Jacob. Was it because God already knew that Esau was going to sell it, or because God was going to force Esau to sell it? So, this basically is kind of touches a little bit on the Calvinist line of predestination, to where people don't actually have free will choice. It's all predetermined by God, and we're just kind of puppets on the strings. And that's not the case. We have our own free will. Esau made his own decision. God knew what that decision would be. So, foreknowledge doesn't necessitate predestination. What that means, just because God knew what was going to happen, doesn't mean that he made it happen. Okay? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But just knowing it doesn't mean that he made it. Okay?
Because God knows what choices we're going to make, doesn't mean that we don't have a choice.
Correct. Yeah. So, uh, I put it on here. Think about it this way. Have we ever sinned? The answer is yes for everybody. We all have and do. If there's no free will, then God causes us to sin. Okay? If there's no free will, those sins that everybody has done, God caused if there's not free will. So that makes it abundantly clear to me that there is free will, because God is not causing us to sin. Okay? Um, he lets us decide for ourselves. I did put a link in here that is by Michael Heiser. He actually wrote a pretty long article about predestination and free will. So if anybody wants that link, let me know. But it's the summary is what I've already said. Um, just because he knows, if we're predestined by his foreknowledge, it is different from being predestined without choice. Okay. So we're going to move right into chapter 26. Start at verse 1. There was a famine in the land. Where's that ring a bell from? Besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. Then the Lord appeared to him and said, Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land of which I shall tell you. Dwell in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give these lands, and I will perform the oath which I swore to Abraham your father, and I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven. And I will give to your descendants all these lands, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Remember, Abraham had to go through a famine too, and that famine ended him up somewhere where he had to uh, lie about Sarah so she wouldn't get taken from him. Right? Here we are, one generation later. Verse 6, Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place asked him about his wife, and he said, She is my sister. For he was afraid to say, She is my wife, because he thought, lest the men kill me for Rebekah, because she is beautiful to behold. Now it came to pass, when he had been there for a long time, that Abimelech king of the Philistines looked through a window, and saw there was Isaac, showing endearment to Rebekah his wife. Then Abimelech called Isaac and said, Quite obviously she is your wife. So how could you say she is my sister? Isaac said to him, Because I said, Lest I die on account of her. And Abimelech said, What is this you have done to us? One of the people might soon have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on all of us. So Abimelech charged all his people, saying, He who touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So we have almost an identical story to what Abraham and Sarah went through, right? They almost caused a lot of harm to this city because they lied, and 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 thankfully, uh, the harm didn't come mercifully, because because the truth was found out. But we'll see that this kind of stuff keeps getting passed down. Right? Abraham did this thing. Righteous Abraham did this same thing, and then it gets passed down to Isaac, who does the same thing. So when we start looking at uh, Jacob and Esau, uh, it's no wonder that there's deceit, that they trick and lie. Um, that's the trait that's being passed down to them. But we do also notice at the beginning of that section, around verse 4 and 5, uh, that God is now Himself making His covenant uh, with Isaac down through this law, or down through this covenant, uh, that the offspring will be blessed. The Abrahamic covenant, going now through Isaac. In verse 12, after the conversation with King Abimelech, verse 12, Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. That seems pretty good. I don't know what the normal reap to harvest equation is. I assume 1 to 1 or better, and that 100-fold is quite a miracle. Uh, and the Lord blessed him, and the man began to prosper and continued prospering until he became very prosperous. For he had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great number of servants. So he's building up, rather, God is building up Isaac's wealth in the Philistine land. Okay. Verse 15, now the Philistines had stopped up all the wells. Oh, I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit. Uh, at the end of 14, we can't overlook so the Philistines envied him. Um, although it was peaceful right now, the Philistines again are going to uh, become a people that end up coming against Israel. The Philistines is where Goliath is from, right? Later on, and David fights them a lot of his life. He also uses them for refuge while he's running from Saul later on. But we'll see, even way back here, they're dealing with the Philistines. But verse 15, now the Philistines had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father. That means they filled them in. So they dig the wells where they can get the water out. Well, the Philistines came and filled them right back in, so they couldn't get the water out anymore. They filled them with earth. And Abimelech said to Isaac, Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we. So now the king of the Philistines is getting a little nervous that Isaac's a little bit becoming a little too powerful to remain in their land. So he asked them to leave. Then Isaac departed from there and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. and he called them by the names which his father had called them. So you understand, he's going to where Abraham. Remember when Abraham and Sarah were down here a long time ago, and they dug all the wells because God blessed them with so much, and they had to dig all the wells just to water the amount of flock that they had. Now Isaac's in the same situation, so he sees his father Abraham's wells there. So the Philistines filled them all in, so he just digs them all back out, and he wants to reuse those. Uh, Verse 19. Also, Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found a well of running water there. But the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he called the name of the well Esek, because they quarreled with him. And Esek means like contentious. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that one also. And he called its name Sitnah. And if I remember that one, Sitma means enmity. Uh, And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, because he said, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." That Rehoboth means room, or something like that. There's space. Um, but we'll see that God is guiding where Isaac is going right now. We don't see that he's saying it. Nothing is we're not reading that anywhere. But if we're studying it, we're seeing that he goes and he wants to set up around this well, and they fight over it. So he leaves that one, and they go over to this well, and they're arguing over that one. So he leaves that one, and so he moves further away, and he goes where this other well is, and they didn't argue over it. So he settled there. What that is God moving Isaac to this space that he wants him, right? When they don't argue over that well, now Isaac knows this is where I should be. This is where God guided him to. Okay. um, then he went up from there to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for my servant Abraham's sake." So he built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord. And he pitched his tent there, and there Isaac's servants dug a well. Uh, so we have a very similar conversation with God that there was earlier, except for this time he says, "Do not fear, for I am with you." Why did he add that on there? So I put down a couple reasons. One might be because Isaac did fear when he was telling Abimelech that Rebekah was his sister. So he did fear there. Uh, he will fear again or would have potential to fear again because of this meeting that's about to happen. We'll cover that in a second. Or it could be uh, because it said the Lord appeared to him that night. It doesn't say he appeared to him in a dream or a vision or anything like that. He appeared to him. Okay, so he bodily appeared. So that is the image of God, the pre incarnate Christ, second person of the Trinity. We're seeing that again here, the same way we saw listed as the angel of the Lord in some places earlier. This is that same person here, clearly claiming to be God. Um, and maybe he was saying, "Don't fear," because of that, because maybe that could be pretty frightening if God just shows up in body form and starts talking to you. Um, or it could be all of those reasons. Um, Alistair Begg always says, when these people, and with Gideon, how they keep chipping down the numbers and the numbers and the number. Now you still have too many people to fight. We need less people, not more. Less, less, less. And Alistair always says, one plus God is a majority. So it doesn't matter. No part of the equation has to do with what's on the other side of it. It's any believer plus God is the majority over whatever is on the other side of that. So he's saying, "Fear not." Okay, I am with you. Um, but this is the future, what he may have been fearing, because the king and the commander are coming, and that's where we're at right now in verse 26. Then Abimelech came to him from Gerar with Ahuzath, one of his friends, and Phicol, the commander of his army. So we have the Philistine king and one of his buddies and the commander of his army all coming to visit Isaac. And Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, since you hate me, and have sent me away from you?" But they said, "We have certainly seen that the Lord is with you." So we said, "Let there now be an oath between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you." Okay, let's stop there for a second. So all of these pagans can see that God is blessing Isaac, right? So you do not need, an atheist does not need God to talk directly to him or show him some specific miracle or any other such nonsense in order for that atheist to believe in God. All he needs to do is look at the people that God is blessing and the creation that God's blessed, and that, the Bible says, is enough knowledge to hold you accountable. So if you say there's no God, even though you can see the creation, you can see the blessings that people get, that alone should drive out any atheism. Uh, Everybody's without excuse. Okay. Let us make a covenant with you, verse 29, that you will do us no harm, since we have not touched you, and since we have done nothing to you but good, and have sent you away in peace. So the Philistines are worried that Isaac, who's being blessed so much, is going to turn around and attack the Philistines because of how strong he's building up to be. Uh, and then they say, "You are now the blessed of the Lord." So they know, they understand what's going on here. Isaac made them a feast, and they ate and drank. And then they arose early in the morning, and then they swore an oath with one another. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. So we had a peace treaty. All right. It came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came and told him about the well which they had dug, and said to him, "We have found water." So he called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. And now we have the founding of Beersheba, which we're going to read about throughout the Bible. And then it kind of switches pace here for the last couple verses, kind of a foresight of what's going to happen. Verse 34, it switches over to Esau. When Esau was 40 years old, he took his wives Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. And they were a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah. And that's where it stops the chapter. It does not pick that story back up in chapter 27, but we will pick that story back up when it comes back. But a couple notes on it. These are not throwaway verses. These actually lead to a lot of what's about to happen. Okay, Esau, first off, took two wives when he knew he should have only had one. Um, and the wives that he took, he didn't gather them from his people the way that Isaac was told to, the way that Abraham did. Esau took his wives, multiple, from the Hittites. He is actually going to add more wives to try to correct his situation. He's going to try to add more wives from his people. But what he should have done was taken a wife from his people first and been done with it. But we see that he took two, and they were from the Hittite women, and it bothered Isaac and Rebekah a lot. And it's not going to go away. It's going to come back up. Um, so the disputes that we have in the family, Abraham and Sarah, that Abraham was called out from an idol worshiping family, called to restart uh, God's plan of salvation through his own people, because he, after the Tower of Babel, remember, he gave everybody over to their own idols, right? You want to worship these false gods, go do it. I'll make my own people. He disinherited everybody else. He said, I'm going to start with my own people. They're going to be the Hebrews. Abraham's going to be the father of all of them. I'm pulling him out to start my line, right? Uh, him and Sarah come out. Uh, they lie about their relationship, uh, but they end up uh, trusting God to give them offspring. They trust God enough when He tells them to sacrifice the chosen offspring, and then God stops him from doing that. That's Isaac. And then we see Isaac getting his wife from the correct people group uh, to carry on this bloodline. And then we see that they're kind of playing politics as far as this is my favorite, this is my favorite, why? Uh, and it bleeds all the way down, and it's going to go all the way down then even through Jacob when we get to Joseph on how they're going to be arguing, because now Joseph is the special one, right? Are we all going to bow down to you? So then the family infighting goes all the way down through there, all the way down to after Joseph, then Moses takes them out, and then Moses and Aaron, they get along for the most part, but even they have their own clashes, and then you have the tribes fighting. And so this family nonsense goes all the way back, and you know, we have a choice in how we act in our individual families. We have a choice on what we want carried to the next generation. So if we want to be tricksters and liars, that'll directly carry right into the next one. And then if they choose the same thing, it'll directly carry right into the next one. But as we scroll back up, could Esau have not sold his birthright? Do we have to lie and have infighting and have it carry to every generation because we're predestined to that? Or do we have a choice that it can stop at any point in time, and that's the end of it? Okay. And surely the next one's still going to have to make their choice, but at least that way you're not feeding that decision with bad values, right? We all have our own free will. Yeah.
If Esau had not lied or cheated his way, when you get or tried to get birthright.
Jacob?
Yeah, from Esau. Yeah. God could have still made it happen in a different way.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, God can have His will done without people doing the wrong thing to bring it about.
For sure.
So.
And the other side to that is who's to say that it was always God's will for Jacob to have that birthright, right? It could be that it was because as God sees everything outside of time, He knew that Jacob was just the path that it was going to take. So He knew it. But say He knew that Esau was the path it was going to take, uh, then it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have been because any lack of a choice for Esau or Jacob. It would have just been because God knew it was going to go through this other branch of the tree instead. So uh, I don't believe that God had to make it go through Jacob. I think He just knew that it would, so He told them it would. Yeah. So, all right, we're going to close there for today. Let's pray. Father, thank you for blessing us with this time together today. Thank you for bringing us all here safely. Um, Thank you for protecting all of us during those storms this week. And we pray for the people that took a lot of damage and suffered losses. Uh, Pray for Karen and what's going on with her today, and for our country. We ask you to continue to bless us till your return. In Jesus' name, amen.